platform because we have just the podcast for you. Welcome back to Cheap Pop, where my friend Matt and I try to take a film, television show, maybe a video game, don't really quote me on that, break it down, flip it, and reverse it, all the while giving you our insights, analysis, and some interesting facts and tidbits you might not have known. I'll be Derek, and I'm actually not your host again today. It will be Matt. But in this episode, we're going to take a look at some more Neon Genesis Evangelion, specifically episode 18. Matty boy, how you doing today?
God, we both know we're waiting for 19, so This episode's got to happen. I'm halfway through 19. Within the first 5 seconds, I'm already losing my mind with excitement. So This one's got to happen. It's still a good episode, but next one, get ready because shit's about to pop off. It's going to get crazy. I can already feel it. I already know it's going to happen, and I'm for it 100%.
And not to be dismissive of 18. 18 is a very interesting, engaging episode as well. Great. Has huge implications of its own right. But like once you get into 19, you'll realize like why we're this level of excited to get to that. But yeah, today we'll be talking episode 18, Life and Death Decisions. So if that's the name of the episode and we're more excited about the next episode, you can understand how the stakes are raising if Life and Death Decisions is like, oh, that's a good one. But 19, man, the next one, that's what you need to gear up for. But
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's going to be good. But let's talk about 18 here today. So we open up real quick. I'll just set the basic scene real quick, and then I'll let you jump in and kind of lead our discussion through it. We open up with Unit 3 being flown in. As you pointed out at the end of last episode, it's being flown in on what looks like a giant cross, essentially. At his apartment, we see Shinji asking where Asuka is, and Misato basically is like, yeah, she's already gone out ahead. She's basically avoiding me. Shinji, being Shinji, has no idea what this means, and Misato's basically like, yeah, you don't really know how girls work, do you? So as we've talked about before, like what Misato is and is not aware of in terms of Asuka's growing resentment towards her, she's damn sure aware. She just basically is like, whatever, I don't have time to deal with this. And then Shinji tries to go into asking about Unit 4 being delisted. Misato is kind of surprised that he seemingly knows anything about it, but she does essentially tell him like, yeah, branch 2 was lost. Unit 4 was delisted because during an S2 drive in Germany, there was a huge explosion and everything disappeared. She's not really pulling punches here, but she does still hesitate to actually tell him who the new pilot is going to be for Unit 3, which is coming into Japan.
And God, does that information play into what happens at the end of this episode? So let's talk about there's a quick scene that I want to talk about where the Ava is being flown through the sky. Mm-hmm. So they make some mentions of some clouds ahead. They say, hey, pretty much go forward. Everything's fine. Atmospheric pressure, blah, blah, blah. They fly into the cloud, and then you see what I would say is lightning strikes or some sort of electric field happening in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So at this point, something's happening.
Yeah.
Usually if something's happening, we assume that there's probably some sort of angel presence there, but we don't get into it. We move on to this next scene where the two of them are talking. Misato also, very interesting outfit. She's like wearing like tan tights or something, where she's usually wearing her like shorts and, her little red jacket thing. Mm-hmm. I just noticed that like, I don't think we usually see her in this. I don't know if there's any significance to that switch, or maybe based off of like where she's going locationally is colder, but yeah. So we talk about Asuka leaving early, and we get to her later in class. We're not jumping forward too far. I'll go right back. But she shows up to class later than Shinji does, even though she left the house early. Mm-hmm. And I wonder to myself if there's some significance to that. There probably isn't. It's probably just something that happens. But I also kind of wonder with like how much she's pursuing Kaji and always seems to kind of be there when he's in the middle of something. If maybe she's picking up on some of the things that Nerve is into, maybe she's not. Maybe I'm overlooking that a little bit, but I'm kind of curious if we have like a little mini Kaji, like kind of trying to figure out what's going on behind the works.
Yeah, I don't know if anything like that is going on. I just kind of took it as she's trying to limit her time around Shinji and them as much as possible, because she's basically just completely annoyed and borderline apathetic towards him, and she's just avoiding in general. So leaving early and then only showing up to class right when it's time for class to begin, just so she doesn't even have to be sitting in the room and talking with him for the 10 minutes or whatever he's there before class begins. That's kind of how I took it. It was, I don't know where she's going. I think Kaji is usually out of her reach and she has no idea where he is. But there could be an extent that she's gleaning, maybe not specific details, but certainly that there's a lot of stuff going on that they don't understand and has like ulterior motives and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was also, this is after really the news of Unit 4 broke. And I think that made me question a little bit more as like, maybe there was something to that absence. And, if you're saying there's not, that's fine. But I guess part of my draw to that conclusion or possible conclusion was, maybe she started thinking a little bit more like, hey, my hometown, Germany or wherever this was located, I probably know some people there that might have affected her more personally than we really see, because she always kind of plays that, And it's always a game. There's always a structured game with her.
Yeah. And that could play into kind of her attitude later, because she says, she has a comment later, and again, we'll get to it when we get to it. But she had as a comment later that I kind of struggled to analyze, I guess, that initially thinking about it, I was like, okay, what is she referring to? But if what you're saying, and I said before, like, I think that would make a lot of sense. And it's kind of weird they don't explore that more with her. So maybe that's just kind of a subtle reference that even though she's not talking about it or showing much about it, that there is some kind of internal turmoil regarding that.
Yeah, so Kaji is going to look after them while Masato is gone. So she's gone for 4 days. Kaji's supposed to be there. And then Risuko, I think, was mentioned to be helping them.
She's going with Misato to the test site.
Yes.
And that makes sense, because she's who always manages and monitors like the synchronization rate and things like that. Yeah.
So Kinsuke shows up to the door with this just hilarious speech where he's like, Miss Masato, can I be the pilot of Unit 3, please? And her face is just like, what in the hell is this kid doing right now? But it's a very funny scene, and it's interesting to like see somebody kind of go out of their way to try to be a pilot, because most people are like, you don't want to be a pilot. It's not really like something that people are looking forward to. It's more of a, damn, we got asked. That sucks.
Yeah. And
no one's excited.
Right. And if you remember with Kinsuke a few episodes ago, I don't remember exactly how many episodes, but where he was basically playing pretend like soldiers or whatever, and like while camping, like in the field or whatever. And Shinji, who had run away, came back and like visited with him. I think it's just kind of showing like there's an emotional immaturity there, more present, I think, still in him, as bright as he is. I think he still does play pretend and has more of that childlike innocence, and by extension, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically just, he doesn't know better. It's the ignorance, there you go, of the whole thing. And so he just thinks about Avas. He's like, oh, they're so cool. I would love to be an Ava pilot. Even though he's literally been inside of Unit 1 when Shinji was in combat, saw what he did to him mentally. He's already now, it seems, aware of Toji being the next pilot, and which we found out last episode. Shinji doesn't know it yet. And so that's like, okay, so he should understand this. And yet here he is happily volunteering, basically begging to be the new pilot. And he's talking about in the classroom as he's kind of like complaining like, oh, how heartless of Misato to turn me down. All I want to be is a pilot. I'll even settle for being a standby pilot. And he kind of makes a reference back to Toji, who's kind of half listening to the whole rant. Like, no one wants to be an Ava pilot more than me, right, Toji? Like, because I think he kind of knows in his grumbling, like, oh, even you have to agree this is messed up, right? You don't even want it, but I do. Why didn't I get picked? And Toji's just out there.
I didn't get that he knows that Toji is a pilot right now. Now, I think most everyone does. I wasn't sure if Kinsuke actually knows, which is why I think he addresses him like that. I don't remember there being a scene where we specifically hear that. Now, if anyone's in the know, it seems like Kinsuke probably would be, because he seems
listens
to be
those
doing
signals and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of background stuff. I also wonder if his drive to like be an Ava pilot, was something related to, I mean, we assume that all of the parents of these children have some sort of a role in the government, in NERV, whatever they're doing. And maybe that, he's trying to make his family proud. Maybe, he feels like he's a child in comparison to like, maybe his parents don't respect him. And that's like, hey, I could do this. This is something I can actually like do to like not necessarily serve your country, because I guess NERV is more of like a, secondary agency, but kind of in line with just like show that he's got the stuff.
Right.
So
yeah, it's possible. I always took it as he probably did know, just because I assume he's been intercepting these transmissions for a while. So for him to have known about branch 2 and all of that, maybe when he talked with Shinji last episode, he didn't know, but I kind of get the feeling that he knows now. And I don't know, because it seemed like at the end of last episode, him and Shinji were even kind of like musing about that possibility, because they find out like, oh, there's going to be a new pilot. And then, oh, Toji's got called to the office and he's been gone all day. That's weird. Like, that's suspicious. But then they do circle back to it here where Toji and Shinji are having a conversation, or not Toji, Kinsuke and Shinji are having a conversation. And Kinsuke basically says like, well, maybe it's Toji. He was out today. And Shinji just kind of like laughs it off like, no way. There's no way. So maybe he doesn't know at that point, but it seems like it would be plausible for him to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get into, let's see, where are we at now?
Asuka yelling at them for calling them the 3 idiots, and him trying to say like, oh, trouble in paradise with the lovebirds. And she basically just snaps at all 3 of them. Then you get that scene with Toji on the roof with Rei. Yeah.
And the attitude, I mean, the lovebirds comment was very similar to last episode, where they had
met very differently.
Bright red face. But yeah, this was like Asuka's pissed. There was also a little mention before that of Toji saying that the only thing that he wanted to agree to be an Ava pilot was to have his sister transferred to HQ's medical hospital, which my guess would be that that's just a better care, or maybe more protected. So we get into the lovebirds comment, and I wrote that this old teacher is still talking about the damn second impact. Like,
probably all of the class is.
I think that every episode is just him like reminiscing and probably telling the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, I just imagine he's been saying that every day, and the kids are just like, God, will this guy ever shut up?
Right. I mean, we know that nobody really listens to him. And even as arguments are breaking out in class, even when everyone jumps up, like, what? Like when they found out Shinji was the pilot, they were like, what, really? Like everyone's jumping up and yelling, and the teacher's still just staring out the window, arms folded behind his back, just like, oblivious. When the second impact happened. Like, he literally doesn't miss a beat. He has no idea what's going on. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so we get into the next scene here, and it's Asuka talking to the class rep, I believe. And this is like a really interesting moment for Asuka, because we get to see the other side of her, where the class rep is talking about, hey, I saw Rei and Toji together. I feel like maybe he's interested in her. And Asuka's like, no, not at all. Rei's super dense, like not as dense as Shinji, but like, there's no way that he's interested in her. And like, putting her at ease and being very kind, which is not something we really see from her much. So
I think it's her one friend and the one person she doesn't have to feel threatened by. She sees Shinji and Rei kind of like rivals to an extent, because she feels she has to prove she's better than them. And now Shinji, we know, has passed her. But this person is like a genuine, like Asuka is almost like the queen bee of this little connection with them. This person's not going to challenge her essentially, and she's going to largely go along with what Asuka wants or says. And so I think their friendship dynamic, it's a power dynamic for sure, but I think it is more genuine, and it's the one true friendship that Asuka probably has in the series.
Yeah. So we get into this next scene here, which we talked about a little bit before, but Kaji is spending the night, and Asuka says something along the lines of, I should be happy you're spending the night, but not today, which I think is drawing back to the Unit 4 Germany situation, which they don't really harp on it much. And you kind of have to, honestly, until we first started having this conversation, I was like, oh yeah, that's why she's feeling like that, obviously. But in the moment, you kind of forget about all that because they don't really bring much attention to her having any feeling towards it. They don't focus on her at all. So I think that's what we're supposed to be getting, but it's very like, if you pick it up, you pick it up. If you don't, just move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And if you don't pick up the context of that, like the underlying context, like we said, of like, oh, well, you have to realize she came from Nerve Europe or whatever, this Germany branch. And so she probably did know people there, or she probably did have some connections or at least awareness of it. Maybe that's affecting her. If you don't pick up on that or remember that, maybe you're just looking at it as she's that distressed about the Toji thing, and not because she likes Toji, but it's just another new rival coming in, another person she thinks, like she thought Shinji wasn't worthy or capable. And now it's like she is slowly falling off of her own pedestal she puts her on, I feel like. She's been surpassed. She's gone from being completely capable to being upstanded a little bit, upended a little bit in some of these combat situations where someone else has had to either save her or she was bested by the angels, whatever. And so I think she's a little bit on fragile ground. And so maybe it's the appearance of a new rival that she also thinks is unworthy that threatens her a little bit. So if you don't want to look at that underlying context, maybe you could just look at it a little more surface level like that and still draw enough to understand, like, oh, I guess that's why she's upset. But I like to think that the underlying thing is there as well, because it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's probably a combination of both. I mean, I think all of that stuff would be weighing on her at the same time. I would say more of the focus is probably the Germany incident, but I didn't even think about it from the new pilot perspective, but yeah, that's definitely a threat to her. And we know that she doesn't ever handle that well. So that's just more fuel to the sadness fire.
She probably has honestly the mindset, because she is so focused on how capable and, worthy and everything she is, that she is the best. She probably would think even of Rei and Shinji, even if Shinji hadn't passed her, as almost like, well, why are they even necessary? You already have me. So like hearing like you're bringing on another pilot almost seems like an indirect way of saying like, yeah, we have to, because what we have isn't good enough. And you're part of what we have. Ergo, you are not good enough.
Oh boy, not good enough. There's another callback to that in this show. And dear Lord, I was like, wow, that was pretty hardcore. Yep. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So, Shinji asked Kaji about his dad, says, hey, I've figured out some information about him. I've learned some stuff about my mom. Can you tell me what you know? And Kaji, like, his demeanor gets almost angry, but not like angry at Shinji, like angry with the fact that he like doesn't really know them. And like, there's so much shit behind the scenes that he hasn't seen. And he pretty much tells Shinji, he's like, whatever you've learned, you're wrong. Like, you don't know what's actually going on. And then he says something along the lines of, you never know anybody else, and you'll be lucky to know yourself.
I got the full quotes of that if you want me to read.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, Shinji's asking about his father, saying like, well, I think I learned a lot. And Kaji is like, no, you really don't know anything. You're wrong, and you only think that you know. Here's the quote. He says, people can never fully understand others. Good luck even knowing yourself. It's impossible to even grasp, yet people are still compelled to learn everything they can about others and themselves. It's why you never get bored of life. At least we have that. And then Shinji asks, well, what about Miss Misato? And Kaji goes on to say, did you know the Japanese word for girlfriend is written with the Chinese characters for women and far away? A woman is a far off existence. A river wider and deeper than any ocean separates the two sexes. And Shinji's just like, I don't understand people who are adults. Like, what the hell are you saying right now? I asked a simple question and you got to go like waxing poetic and philosophical over here about just how, like, oh, you can't even begin to understand one another. Like, just give me a plain answer. I'm 14.
Yeah, he definitely goes into it. And listening to him say that, I think there was a lot more to that than just talking about the father. I think that was a big comment on himself. So I think Kaji is trying to, his kind of goal right now is that he is trying to uncover the truth of what everyone's motivations are, what's really going on in Nerve, and he is never really finding the truth, or at least feels like he's 100% on like, what is everyone doing here? Yeah. And I think there's a lot of that in trying to analyze himself. Like, why do I do the things I do? So for instance, with kind of being a misogynist and always trying to like pursue that aspect with women, it's like, why do I constantly act like that? Is it really like something that I think is beneficial to like getting information out of people, or is it just the way I am? And I think that he doesn't feel like he understands himself or his motivations for the things that he does. And he's still trying to kind of figure himself out. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone in this series seemingly has their issues and their hangups and things like that. But few of them seem like they're genuinely trying to understand themselves. Some of them shut down when faced with that. Shinji, for instance, anytime he's pressed for why he does certain things, he'll say like, well, what's wrong with running away from pain or whatever? Like, he doesn't willingly explore it a lot of the time. Kaji, seemingly through this kind of way he's explaining it, it does feel like he's kind of opening up the hood and being a little bit honest with himself, at least. Maybe not understanding it fully, but at least acknowledging a little bit of that vulnerability and a little bit of those flaws that kind of make him the way that he is. And that does give depth to his character. He's actually used as kind of a mouthpiece for this, for later episodes, for sure. And I think it's actually a good counterbalance. I think it gives more depth to his character than you really got in the first half of the series. Yeah, I would agree with you there. So we get into the next scene, which is Unit 3. The following morning, yeah.
Yeah, and they talk about Unit 3 being ready for combat right away. To which I'm watching the show and I'm like, USA, USA. And
see how that feels.
Things go horribly awry.
Yeah. So it's Risuko saying, at this rate, Unit 3 will be combat ready in no time. But Misato's not really excited about it. She's just kind of like, And Risuko's like, well, you should be excited. Like, you'll be in charge of a 4th Eva now. That's a big deal. And Misato kind of like, she's not excited, but she kind of like finds a way to like jab a needle a little bit in Risuko's direction. Not like she's expecting Risuko to give her an honest answer of this, but just kind of, again, bringing back to that point of like, I know you're not fucking telling me something. And she's like, 4 Evas to myself. I bet I could destroy the entire world with all that. And Risuko kind of gives her a side eye, but then just kind of like keeps taking notes and changes the subject. And it's just like, yeah, there's still very much tension there. And I like that they don't just let that go and forget that the previous couple episodes have happened with their own trust and relationship kind of eroding now.
Yeah, when she said that line too, I feel like I just got inceptioned, and I'm like, I want Misato to go rogue, and I want Ava's to like, I want her to have like, maybe she's not going to get all 4, which I think realistically she wouldn't, but I would love to see Shinji and Misato kind of like going off of Nerve's path and doing their own thing, whether that means that there's like another company that's been investing in Ava's or something like that.
Right.
But I want to see a war between Nerve and Misato's team. I'm for it. I want it to happen. Okay. I kind of feel like there's some hints being thrown in here.
I can dig that.
All right. So this Ava is, let's start out, is creepy. It's creepy Ava. It's very dark. It's got bloodshot eyes. It's got some scary vibes.
Yep.
And it's also an angel.
Yep. The instant they start the synchronization test, it goes completely AWOL. You have this like blue gunk matter or whatever immediately kind of like swimming into like the joints of it and stuff. They try to shut it down. It won't shut down. They try to eject the entry plug. It can't eject. It's literally like caught in this gunk. Yeah. And like held in, which is interesting because it's like if the angel's in control, does it really need the pilot, or is it maybe it just understands like, oh, Ava pilots are also a threat. Ergo, I'm not going to let this one go. Just go potentially pilot another, because you don't know. Like, did the or angels know that there are other Avas available or not? Maybe they're thinking like, no, you got to kill both targets, both the Ava and the pilot inside, and so it's just keeping Toji locked in there. But yeah, it's immediately on the march, and you have all of this where they're trying to figure out like, okay, well, we know that the pilot has vitals like a heartbeat and a respiratory function going, but we can't shut it down and we can't eject the pilot. So he's probably already been contaminated at this point. Gendo's running this whole operation again, because in this explosion that just leveled it, just like Germany, Misato and Ritsuko are there. And this explosion goes off. So there's no one in charge other than Gendo. We thought early in the episode, and this is something to come back to later, we were told that Kaji was essentially going to be in charge, and now Gendo is instead in charge, which is interesting. It's a subtle thing that you can kind of miss a little bit. Maybe you could just say like, well, given the scale of what this is, and Ava taken over by an angel, Gendo would just assume authority anyway. But the fact that you never even see Kaji there, I think is an interesting thing, which next episode will play into a little bit. But yeah, Gendo basically, like when he finds out like, okay, so whether or not he's alive, we can't get him out. We can't shut it down. He officially designates Unit 3 as the 13th angel. So a pattern orange, just in case you're wondering, means it's not yet confirmed what it is. Pattern blue is confirmed angel. So when it first is marching, they're saying it's a pattern orange. And then once they designate it as such, it becomes registered as a pattern blue. So they're like, all right, we're going to set up the defense line at Nobayama and destroy the target. That is the only objective. And Shinji still has no idea. He doesn't even know what's coming their way. He just knows like, oh, there was an explosion at the test facility. Like, that's horrible. What about Misato and them? Like, I don't even know what to do with this. And Asuka's like, it doesn't matter. We just have to fight. Like, there's no questioning to have. Like, you just deal with it. The thing is coming this way. We're in position. We're going to engage it, whatever it is. And then you have visual confirmation of Unit 3 marching, and Shinji is like in disbelief. He's like, there's no way that's the angel. And Gendo's like talking to him on the comm system, basically like, yep, that's the angel. Mission is the mission. And Shinji is like, well, there's got to be another kid on that, like a kid my age. Asuka at that point then messages or comm links with Shinji, and she's like, wait, you seriously still don't know? The fourth pilot is, and then her feed cuts to static. I initially, my honestly, and I don't know what the motivation would be behind it, but my initial reaction to that was I was like, did Nerve cut off her feed because she was about to tell Shinji something?
100% what I thought.
Yeah, that's not what it is, though. It turns out just she apparently wasn't freaking paying attention, and Unit 3 just pounced her ass and knocked her out, like dispatched her in seconds. Her feed cuts to static, but you still have audio. You hear her scream, and then you see the feet from the camera angle, the feet of Unit 3 walking past the downed Unit 2. You can't really tell the damage, but it's clear that she's been beaten and taken out of action in this case. So then it's like, oh, okay. So this thing is a threat. Like, caught her flat-footed or not, it dispatched Unit 2 in seconds. So yeah, things are escalating here, and then it's going to come down to Rei having the next chance to engage it. Do you want to tag in there?
Yeah, that thing's little grasshopper jump is quite powerful. Yeah, so, and I want to get into the angel keeping the
entry plug.
The entry plug. I think that is a play in more than one way. I think that is because it realizes that, I mean, that's
reluctant.
Self-preservation for sure is, hey, there's a pilot on here. I think that's going to make them question. I think that is also an angel having I'm going to say in this episode, I am under the belief that angels have a hive mind, whether they show it or not.
Okay.
I think that was specifically done because that angel knows that Shinji is going to be reluctant to fight, and maybe that based on the events that happen, it will change Shinji's perspective on what he's doing. Now, am I sure that that's happening? No, but there is some speculation on my side that there is a play from the angel to try to cross Shinji's teams.
Yeah.
So
and I could see that. That's an interesting thought. And as soon as you talked about using Toji almost like a shield, I was like, that makes total sense. Not just Shinji, but literally everyone is hesitant to engage. Rei watches the thing march right past her, and until it does its back flippy grasshopper jump, like you talked about, she doesn't engage. She literally has the drop on it, and she hesitates and acknowledges like he's in there. Like even she is showing a little bit more human side here and showing reluctance, whereas before she would have been just like, nope, this is what I was told to do. I'm going to do it.
And we get a mention from that earlier when she's having a conversation with Toji is he mentions, hey, I think you're just actually having some feelings towards Shinji. That,
worried about Shinji,
You're worried about him. You want to take care of him. And she's questioning her own emotions at this point. And I would say that this has to do with where they're at in the process of, getting her memories back or whatever they're exactly doing in this tube that we don't know about yet. But something's changed in her recently. She's getting some of those human emotions back where she's been more robotic in the past. But yeah, this thing jumps on her so crazy fast, which, being an anime, we get a picture and then the next picture is
the next frame.
It's on top of her. So it's super fast. It's burning through her left arm, trying to integrate with her Eva. And this is the first time I remember where Gendo does something that I think is not in Rei's best interest. So they talk about this arm needing to be severed. Gendo says, cut the arm, amputate it. And one of the girls that's working at Nerve says, well, we need to cut the connection to, I forget what the name
neural connection.
Neural connection. Thank you. We need to cut that from the arm. And he says,
she's going to feel everything.
Yeah, do it. Just do it. Now, there are two sides I think you can take from that. One is that he's thinking every second we waste, like even you asking me this question is
burning time we don't have.
Yeah, you're burning time we don't have. The other is I don't give a shit about what happens to her. It's fine. Just save the Ava. I
think he does care because he does yell out when she's in danger at some point. Like there is a moment where that does happen. So I think it's more the first is like time is the factor.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I went back and forth on this, but either way makes sense to me. So the arm severed, she is in pain. Like it is very obvious that she feels like she just got an arm ripped off. And I question how that's going to make her feel about Gendo from this point forward, because from her perspective, I think that could be a careless act. Yeah,
no, for sure. So she's taken out. She is dispatched easily, especially once the arm is gone. She has no real ability to fight back. And that leaves Unit 3 marching towards Unit 1. And Shinji is still reluctant. He knows, he can see him marching towards them. He still can't bring himself to really even fight back, because in his mind, even not knowing who it is, to win this fight would be tantamount to murder, because it's another person. It's a person not in there of their own will. They're not in control. And so he's refusing, even as the angel attacks him, tackles him to the ground. He's looking at the entry plug and he's like, the pilot's still in there. I can't do anything. The angel throws him up against the mountainside and is strangling him. And they're talking in the control room, like, we need to sever connection, or we need to do this or that. And Gendo's like, no. They're like, the pilot's life is in danger. Yeah. He's like, no. Like he's like telling Shinji on the intercom, like, you need to do something. What are you doing? And Shinji's basically like, I can't do it. I won't do it. I'm not going to kill someone. They're like, if you don't, you'll die. To which he's like, I don't care. I'm not going to kill someone. And Gendo's like, all right, activate the dummy plug. And we see the dummy plug in action for the first time. And it's a horrifying thing because you want to talk about no kill like overkill. Holy shit. Shinji's entire display goes dark. He still has some degree of neural connection, it seems like, because it's almost like he can't see what's happening, but he can like feel or sense what's happening. Unit 1's eyes glow, the dummy plug takes over, and it immediately rips the arms around from its throat, like pulls them away, grabs the Angel, Unit 3, by the throat, snaps its neck. The fight is over. It just broke the thing's neck. The thing is ostensibly dead, the Ava, or Angel, if you want to say at this point. But no, it's not done. It drops the thing's limp body to the ground, and then it punches through its face, and the whole thing explodes. And that's when I was like, holy shit, the power of these Avas, that they can effortlessly do that to one another. And it's still not done. It's going to just start ripping out ribs, tearing into the core of the body, ripping the head off. I mean, it is like what's left of the head. It is just absolutely brutalizing this Angel. And like even people in the control room are like holding themselves from vomiting, basically, because they are so disturbed at what they're watching, because this thing is just, it's not even savage or primal. It's like, it's inhuman. It's just this most heinous, over the top thing. And everyone in the room understands there's still a pilot in there. There's still a kid in there. And Gendo, he's just watching like, yes, it's working well. It's look at its display of power and control. He's not even thinking about the pilot anymore. In his mind, it's already foregone conclusion that that's done. Yeah. And Shinji's just like, he's trying to figure out what's going on. He's like, stop it. Like, I can't tell what's happening, but stop it. Then he can, I guess, and this is why I say I think there's some kind of neural link still there. He's aware when it's holding the entry plug finally in its hand, Unit 1, and Shinji is begging Gendo to stop. Like, at this point, he knows it's got to be over. The fight has to be over if you're literally holding the entry plug and everything else that's happened. And Unit 1 crushes the entry plug in its hand, and you're like, oh, wow. Okay, so Toji should be dead then, yeah? Yeah, that is an intense scene for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll jump it back to you. I got excited and built up a head of steam there.
So, oh man, we got to go back to Gendo's line to Shinji. Yeah. And if you have it in front of you, let me know what the exact quote is.
Okay.
But they talk about the dummy plug still being plagued with issues. But Gendo says something along the lines of, it's still better than what we've got with the current pilot, to where I know Shinji can hear what he just said. Like, he said it to his face. He's pretty much like, you can't get the fucking job done. Move on to the next thing. Like, just completely dismisses him, dismisses the fact that he cares about this, that there's another life on board. He does not give a shit at this point. It is move on to the next thing. This pilot can't get it done. Yeah. And that crack at him, I think, was the final straw, whether we see that right now or not. But it was like, why am I seeking attention from you? Like, why do I care about anything you have to say? You do not give a shit about anybody but yourself. Yep. Now, we'll get into that a little later, and that might not have been the catalyst, but damn if it wouldn't have been for me. Yeah. And that thing was very much Stretch Armstrong. Had to make a mention of that because its arms just like, yeah, it's very cool. But his neck, as you see this thing strangling him, you can see like
the imprints of the hand.
Yes, the imprints. It looks like someone's twisting it. I mean, it's the first time we really get a very good view of like how much that neural connection is impacting the pilot. Like, he is strangling him to death. Like, he is going to die, which makes you question some of these other things that have happened. Like when that, thing went through its head.
Lobotomy, basically, yeah.
How did that not have a stronger impact on Shinji to the point that he is even able to function at this point? So it crushes this entry plug, and I wrote, and now I'm sad.
Yeah.
Because when you're looking at it, you're like, Toji's dead. Like, there's no way anyone can survive that. We know where they sit in the entry plug, and it's crushed like a Coke can. And we get to this next scene where I believe we're talking with Masato at this point. So Masato is alive and struggling about not telling Shinji who the pilot was. Yeah. And I believe, is she talking to him at some point now?
Well, okay, so that is there. There's a quick little interstitial in there as well where we see the class rep working on lunch for the next day, and she's hoping to tell Toji the next day how she feels about him. So
pulling her heartstrings.
Yeah, like right after he's apparently died, she's there like, I'll tell him tomorrow. I'm going to make this. I hope he likes this, blah, blah, blah. Yes, then at the test site, we see Misato waking up and Kaji is at her side. Again, how fast did he rush over there to check on her and everything? But she explains that she was lucky to survive, and he basically tells her what happened. Then, yes, she radios Shinji, who's in his Unit 1 still, and he's like breaking down, even again, not knowing anything. And she's basically going to tell him who the pilot of Unit 3 is. She just keeps saying how sorry she is. And even before she's able to say the name, he can see them pulling out of the crushed entry plug Toji. And it just ends with Shinji realizing who it is and then screams as he seems to snap. His pupil like dilates big and then just like shrinks super fast. He screams and the episode ends. And it's just like something just snapped. Like whatever's about to happen, Shinji is like not going to be the same after this.
Yeah, shit has gone off the rails. And as I look back at that episode, I'm thinking about Toji getting pulled out of the entry plug. And obviously I'm not any further along in this series than where I'm at right now, and a little bit of 19. But I don't really know what happens to Toji. We haven't seen the future. I have not seen what's happening yet. And I would think from Nerve's perspective, especially with Gendo knowing how Shinji is, I might be worried. I guess Gendo wouldn't be worried, but other people would be worried of what if he's dead? And how is that going to mentally affect Shinji? And that's kind of when Misato talks about who the pilot is. She's talking about him like he's dead.
Yeah.
Does she know he's alive at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think she literally, after talking with Kaji, like she just woke up, he told her, and then I think she immediately called Shinji. And I think her belief is that he is dead. Because they're pulling him out. They're discovering it in that moment. And so I don't think she has a means of direct communication with them and Shinji at the same time. So I think she thought he was dead. And that's why she's framing it that way. But all episode long, nobody wants to tell Shinji. Even when people are finding out, they don't want to. Like Asuka declines twice to tell him. Then when she finally tries to, she gets interrupted. Misato declines to tell him multiple times. I thought Kinsuke did as well, but after talking about it with you now I do think he probably didn't know for sure. Even if he suspected, he didn't know for sure. So that was just kind of a theme all episode long, is like seemingly a bunch of people know, but nobody's actually telling Shinji about it. And then he has to find out in that moment. I don't think it would have changed how he reacted to certain things, but it's just that much more horrifying to what was already an incredibly traumatizing thing for him.
God, I want to talk about 19 so bad, even though I'm not even finished with it yet.
Dude, literally, if you have the time today, if you have the time somehow, watch the rest of 19, because I swear to God, I will start recording a new video right now so that we can actually talk about this. 19 is phenomenal. I think I said this before we were even recording. I think it might be my single favorite episode of the series, because it's the point at which I went like, holy shit, like, where it just, every time I kept thinking like, oh, okay, I see the magnitude of what we're talking about now. And it's just like, it goes up again, then it raises the bar, and then it goes even further. And it's like in the span of one episode, it feels like we cover so much ground as far as not just answers, but an idea of like the grandiose nature of this narrative and everything. And it's just like, this is fascinating and horrifying. And it just leaves you with this feeling of like, what the fuck is going to happen next? Like, where do we go from here now that we know this? It's so good. Because now, we're in this final stretch. After 19, we're down to the last, you count watching 20. So we're down to the last 7 episodes after this. And so we are into a full sprint here, and shit is going to get heavy, and it's going to get incredibly fast moving. It's incredible. Like, you're going to watch this episode, and even before we record, I know you're going to be texting me, similar to how I was texting you earlier watching it. So yeah, if you watch it today, I'm fairly certain we're going to be recording today.
All right.
But yeah,
I would love to do a live reaction on that one. I don't feel like we're going to, but that one feels like it would have been a good one to like witness real time, because just from the short bit that I've watched, I'm like, dear Lord, I'm so in for this. Let's make it happen.
Yep. Yeah. Probably won't get that in for 19, but we are planning to do End of Evangelion, the movie, capper, you could say, to the series that way. We'll figure it out. We got to figure it out because we're in different states recording. So we're going to figure out how to get one of us to the other for like a recording session day in which we're going to watch the last 2 episodes of the series, plus the then 80-minute feature, or maybe it's a 90-minute feature film as well that puts a bow on the entire original series. And then we'll record audio, get live reactions from it, and then when we put the episode out, it'll have the more detailed analysis and everything that we've interpreted from it, as well as these like little interstitials and spliced audio bits of our reacting to things like, and then this happens. This was what we sounded like, or whatever. Like, this was how we tried to explain it in the moment, experiencing this, like something like that it gives you that little extra measure of immersion, because that's a spectacle, man. But we'll get to that. We'll figure out the logistics of that so we can make that happen. That is the one that demands it, I would say.
I'm excited.
But yeah, I think that'll pretty much wrap up episode 18 here. I'm curious, to those of you listening, did you learn a little bit today? Did you laugh, maybe cry? Probably more cry than laugh. If you laughed at this, then I have some serious questions. But if you did, then consider leaving us a review and subscribing to Cheap Pop on YouTube. We are growing a little bit there for a brand new show and everything. To already have 60 subscribers, that's pretty sweet. But support us that way if you can. And if you follow the podcast, whether you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast, if you follow us there, you'll get these new episodes first there. The YouTube video version of the podcast comes out a week later, so you get early access there. You also get less filtered. The YouTube ones are a little bit shrunk down, a little bit edited down, just to keep the time working there. So you can get basically the full unabridged version here on the podcast. But, if you don't like this, then maybe don't leave the review. We don't need that kind of negativity.
Yeah, we don't like you.
No, you can. No, I'll take that back. I was about to say you can piss right off, but I was like, oh, if you're listening to this, maybe don't antagonize before talking about a review.
I'm just kidding. We like you. We like you.
Yeah. You're actually very good looking today. But that about does it. You may think our take's cheap, but to you we say, whatever, man. Get your own podcast about Evangelion. I've been Derek.
And I've been Matt.
Until next time, guys. Peace.
Thanks, everybody.